Hello everyone, and welcome to this short tutorial series on statistics. So I'm working on the no bullshit guide to statistics, and in the process there's a lot of steps. So while you wait, I figured let's start with something that looks like a complete example, a worked example from getting the data to probabilistic modeling to statistics. So this is what this tutorial will be about. And very important, you can follow along at home by clicking this button. So when you click this, mybinder.org will launch a custom clone of this notebook. So what you're looking at here is called Jupyter Lab. So it's launching here. It's going to run at oh, it's already ready. Yeah, so very important to practice running these steps on your own instead of just watching me do things. So you see it's running, still launching. I just want to show you where to go. So this is the file browser, and you need to go to the, it's already the stats overview folder. So if you open introduction, you will see exactly the same thing as what I'm showing in the video. So and then each video will have its own notebook, so you have everything here. So you don't need to install anything, just click that button. Click that button. Okay. Okay, other resources. So the book is not ready yet, but I've got lots of stuff. So you can browse the outline. There's a detailed concept map. There are 2 blog posts. So I won't talk about these things, but if you're interested, there's a lot more details than what will be covered in this tutorial. For this tutorial, we're just going to do an overview of the real-world examples. You see what's the data we're working, why are we doing this, what are we trying to do, and get started on the data cleaning. And in the end, we'll show some descriptive statistics. So descriptive statistic is creating summaries, either as graphs or as numerical summaries, to better understand the data. So no statistics yet, no probability, just processing the data with Excel. So I'm gonna reduce my size here a little bit, and we'll focus on the notebook. Okay, so what is this worked example? I mean, this is the main purpose of this video, is to get you to know the context, the real world context. So Amy has an idea to introduce statistics in her startup. So she runs a small company, and she believes that all her employees should know statistics. So she has experience with statistics. She knows how useful it is to manage data, find insights, and everything should be quantifiable and measurable. And she wants all her employees to do statistics, but she's not sure. Like, maybe is it worth it? Is offering statistic training, specifically 100 hours of statistic tutorials and course for all the new hires, is it worth it? She believes it is. So this is her theory. But she's a scientist, so she wants to measure, test her theory. And specifically what we're measuring here is something, a hypothetical quantity called employee lifetime value, ELV, which is the sum. Let's say it's the employee is a programmer, you can measure how many projects they shipped. If it's a secretary, you can measure how efficient they are at managing meetings, scheduling things. If it's a salesperson, it's a little bit easier to measure, how much sales did they produce. So we are combining it, independent of the profession or the specialization. She has the ability to measure employee lifetime value. So let's assume that. I mean, it's a little bit unrealistic, but you have a single number that summarizes all the employees' contribution. So she has the ability to measure that, and she has produced, in order to compare statistics versus no statistics training, like the effect of statistics training, this is how she's gonna run the experiment. So every new hire, let's look here, a new employee comes in, Amy will flip a coin and either assign them to the no stats group, this is called the control group, or to the statistics group, where they take 100 hours of statistics. So the reason for these two groups is to have, this is called a random assignment, and this is what will allow us to make inferences in the end, like is statistics effective? Does it produce higher employee lifetime value? Without the control group, we don't know. We would be like, oh, we did statistics, this is the value. So this is a key thing in statistical experiments, to have a control group. Okay, and the group that receives the statistic training is called an intervention. So we can measure the effect of the intervention relative to the control group, and this we'll see for the rest of the notebooks. We'll always be comparing these, the data here versus the data here. Okay, Amy has recorded for 61 employees. So she flipped a coin for each of them and assigned them to the different groups. And after 1 year, she has collected the total employee lifetime value for each employee. And the way she presents the data is in this Excel file, a spreadsheet. These are the 31 employees that didn't get statistic training, and this is 30 employees that did get statistic. So you can look at the numbers a little bit to see this is clearly bigger, but you know, you shouldn't look at individual. This is a pretty large number here too, so it's not useful to look at numbers individually. You wanna, we'll see, we wanna plot them, we wanna compute averages, there's better things than staring at the numbers. Okay, and what are Amy's goals or research questions? They're twofold. Is there a difference? Was there any difference? So does the statistic make, taking 100 hours of statistic training, did it produce any change? Because it could be, you know, you give them statistics and they're indistinguishable from the group that didn't take statistics. So this is a basic thing to check, you know, does it make a difference? Does taking statistic training make a difference? And if it does, so that's the second question, how big of an increase in employee lifetime value did we obtain through this statistic training? So the first question is saying, is there any difference? Could be, and the second one is how big? So obviously the second question is more interesting, but the way, you know, the first question is a baseline, like maybe there is no difference. So then I don't want to, like, we stop the research, it's like useless. And yeah, so this is the first video. We're gonna do now some data cleaning. In the next video, we'll talk about probabilistic modeling, because you see there's a lot of variability in this data. So we need to smooth things out and think of them as distributions. So this we'll be able to do that with probability. Combining data and probability, we'll get to the statistics chapter, where we'll do statistical inference. We'll be able to answer these questions finally. And the fourth video is a bonus about linear models, which we'll talk about later. We'll have time to get to that. Okay, with me? So far so good? All right, so let's crunch some numbers. Let's get this data processed. If you click here, it will open the second notebook. Okay. So chapter 1, okay, let me show you the outline of the book. Here is chapter 1. It talks about a lot of data manipulation. There's a lot of stuff here, so we won't go into these details. this is the blog post I mentioned earlier. Okay, so we can't go too far into details, so we'll just focus on data extraction and data cleaning. And we already talked about that random assignment, the fact that we have these two groups with roughly, we took employees at random, so we can expect the groups are similar. And the only difference between the groups is one group had statistics, the other one didn't have statistics. So we won't touch on all these topics, but the data extraction and data cleaning will show a hands-on example. And we'll also talk about descriptive statistics, which is summaries, numerical summaries and visualization. So that's all of this is in chapter 1 in the book. Here we're just going to do a quick overview. Okay. Data in practice. So what are we talking about? We want to do statistical analysis, but many times the data is in a format that you can't need to do some processing before you can do the analysis. And we can commonly identify 3 steps in this data pre-processing, or sort of extracting. So if it's in a database, you get it out of the database and local files. Then there's transformation. You could maybe merge. You have data from there, then merge. It could be cleaning. There's junk data. You remove those. And then the load step is, you're preparing it. Okay, you're done with the cleaning. Now it's ready for analysis. Loading it into the system where you'll be doing that. So all of these steps, we're going to use the pandas library, which is very good. It's like a Swiss Army knife for all your data needs. And we're going to use all these functions that are part of the pandas library. So I'm going to run this code now. And in case you've never seen Python code before, what this is doing is importing the pandas library. And just because I don't want to write pandas every time, I've imported it under an alias called PD. So when you see PD dot something, PD dot read Excel or PD dot, it's pandas. And Seaborn is another library which we'll use for data for plotting distributions, plotting the data. Okay. So you need to run this cell because all the other cells will depend on this. Okay. So let's start with the extraction. We saw here, Amy gave us this Excel sheet, and we want to just touch the data. Give me the data. The function is not surprisingly called read Excel. If you look at the files in this repo, it's here, employee lifetime values. ODS is open document spreadsheet, is the same as XLS file. Okay, and when we load it, we're going to put it in a data frame. So DFs is short for data frame, which is the standard. You can think of it as a table in Excel. This is the standard way that pandas, it's called a pandas data frame. So nothing much happened here. We have just took the data out of the Excel and we have it now in this object called raw data frame. Raw. One thing to note, the last row, here there was no entry, but the way pandas works, it read it. It assumed they're complete rows. So it says, I tried to read it, but there is no data there. So this is short for not a number. So we have to think about that. In a later step, we have to get rid of that. The shape of the data frame is 31 by 2. So there are 2 columns and there are 31 rows. Notice the index here is 30 because the first index is 0. So this is pretty standard in Python. Okay, and you can call the describe method on the to get some basic statistics. So the number of values right? We know that there are 31, 30, so total of 61. And the average employee lifetime value in the group NS is 1018. The average in group S is 1048. So it's interesting. We see there is a difference, and a positive difference. So statistics seems to be useful. There's like around 130 difference. And these are some other properties of the data, like its standard deviation. So that's how variability, its minimum, its maximum, and some the quartiles. So 25% of values are smaller than this, half the values are smaller than this, and 75% are smaller than this. So it just tells you roughly what the data looks like. But we'll have better visualizations below, so let's not look at it too. The key thing is, we got the data. That's the key. Okay. Unfortunately, this format here is a little bit arbitrary. Like, why do we have on each row we have a number? There's no relation between this number and this number. It's really two separate data sets. This column and this column have nothing to do with each other. It's not like this employee and this employee are paired or something. They're completely random. Right? So you have, it's just two columns of data. And if this is called white data. Many times when humans prepare data tables, they will use the columns to mean something. And we don't want that. When we're going to do the analysis, we would like everything to be one big column, one very long column, or tall data. And specifically, the goal is for each row in that table to talk about one person only. So here, this row talks about one person from this group and one person from this group. So it's like, why is one row containing that? This is, in general, not good for statistics. All the functions we're going to use will assume that each row is one observation. So the first step we're going to do is to transform into the white data into tall data. So look at what happened. So we want each row here is this value. Instead of by looking at which column it is, we have the group membership we have the number, we have it as an explicit label. So similarly for this 110, we say it's in the group no statistics, and this is its value. Same for these values. When we're done with this column, we're going to start with this column and put the label group membership and value. Group membership value. So why we do all this to be explained later, but it's a standard prerequisite for all the data. Once you have it in this format, life will be easier. So let's do that. It's very simple. There's a function called melt. There's a method called melt, and you tell it some parameters. I won't explain it too much, but it did this transformation from took it from the format with two columns, then put it into one column with a group explicit label. Okay, now the labels are too redundant. Group NS, group S. Let's just have the label be NS. And similarly for group S, let's just have it S. We can do that with replace. And I'm putting it into another. Okay, so now the groups are a bit shorter. We like short label. Short label is good for your life. Okay, last step, we have 62 observations, but this one is missing, so we just don't want it. We really want to have 61 observations. So 0 to 60, that's 61 observations. We had 61 employees. We know which group they were in and what their ELV, employee lifetime value is. So that's it. The data cleaning step is done. And we're going to save this the clean data, the reformatted into the tall format, we're going to save it to a CSV file. So to CSV takes the data in this data frame and writes it to this file. And here is a new file produced. In case you've never seen this, let me show you. Comma CSV stands for comma separated values, and it's an easy way to put tabular data into a text file. So this is very portable. You can bring it between any computer. It's not an Excel file. We know we are able to read it. So this is the first row is called the header, and then we have all the data that we see here. Okay. And just to check this worked, we're going to reload the data frame. Read CSV. This is write CSV. This is a read CSV, and we've got the exact same data as before. Good. So the only weird thing here was this melt operation that we had to do. This is just one example. You know, depending on how you get the data and what you have to transform it, there might be more operations. But I just want to show one thing that, you know, it's very common. Very common. You have to do white data to tall data. Okay, so we got the data. We can start processing. We can start with the descriptive statistics. One thing I would like to note is previously, if we wanted to talk about the group NS, which how do you select? So now we have in the same column, in the same data frame, we have both non-statistics and statistics. So by this expression here says, give me all the values in the data frame that have group equal to S. Okay. This is a Boolean expression, right? Is it equal to? And it returns a series for each value. It tells you, is it in the group S or is it not? So this is not very useful on its own. It's a Boolean. But you can think of it as a mask. So this will hide it. When you combine that mask, you input it to the data frame, it will select all the rows that match the mask. So let me show you what it is. So essentially we cut off all the entries that were not in the group NS, were not selected. We only selected the one that were in group S. So we got the data frame for all the statistics. So furthermore, let's say we want to select the EOV column, right? Because this is both. You have all the data, and you could do something like mean. You just calculated the mean. So this is how you see this kind of expression repeatedly in this notebook, is selecting all the group S rows, select the column EOV, and then we can do any computation with that. Okay, so that's the price to pay to have this tall format. We have to do that all the time. Oh, well, let's look at that here. So I want to run describe on the two columns. So this is what we did earlier when we had them in the two columns. We get the same result here. And the values are the same because it's the same data. We just massaged it. We didn't touch it. Can we compare? Look, it's exactly the same. 118, 1148. I mean, it better be. Otherwise, there was a problem. 118 and 1148. Okay, good. Okay. These are going to be really important. The fact that they're included here. So the mean is a common statistic, the average value. The standard deviation tells you the spread. Roughly, so the mean is here, and you can think of around 1,200, and there's a spread. The data will vary by 200 on each side. You can say 60% of data is roughly within 900 and 1,300. So this is what standard deviation means. Tells you roughly where the spread is. And min and max, you can imagine what that is. This is called the median. This is if you sort the data in increasing order and you look at the value in the middle, that's the median for the two. So that's what I wanted to say is look, there is a difference. So the statistics group has a higher average, has a higher mean. So note, there's hope. Okay, the book will go a lot more into these descriptive statistics, the numerical summaries. For now, let's just look at some pretty pictures. So the same information about the quartiles, 25, 50, and 75% quartile, so the first, second, and third quartile, you can show them visually. Here is the line, here is the median, the first quartile 25 percentile and 75 percentile. So you can imagine that half the data is in this box and half the data is in this box. So it's very useful to have a picture where the data is. You see that the statistics data is a little bit higher. So that's a good sign. It's a good sign. The simplest kind of plot, there is no visualization here. We're literally putting the points from the two data sets. Technically, they should all be on the same line because there is the vertical line doesn't mean anything. But we just spread them about with jitter. This is called jitter, a little bit around, and you see the statistics data. I mean, both of them are really spread out. You see all kinds of employee lifetime values. But roughly, if you squint, you see that the data is here, higher here. We don't know. It's not clear from this picture. Here is a histogram. So instead of plotting individual points, we put them into bins. And this is not a good histogram. Here is a good histogram. We just saw them one below the other. Two separate histograms. So we see the bins are a little bit different, but we see again there seems to be a difference. The line here shows the median, the average, the mean. So we see the mean in the statistics data is a bit higher, and in general the lump of data is around here, versus here there is a difference. Let's actually compute the two means and compute their difference. It's 130 points. So the difference between this line, the blue line, and the orange/yellow line is 130 points. So there is a difference on average. And these two numbers, the standard deviation of the numbers, which we saw this in the table, right? We have the means with the standard deviations. We have them here again, tell you the spread of the data. Okay, so we're done with the statistics. What we really, we looked at the data, we found some numbers. Now we can really rephrase the question. So we have observed a difference of 130 between the two groups. However, we've also observed the variability of 230 and 260. So it's not like if all the data were clustered here and clustered here and there is no overlap, then it's obvious what's the right thing to do. Like that there is a difference and what. But because of the noise, it's not clear. Like is statistics better? Is the statistic training useful? Maybe it's just noise. Maybe it is difference that we saw is just due to the fact that there is noise. So this is what we'll analyze in the next video, is try to model, find a probability model to describe this variability and this is called probability theory. And in general, the analysis will continue with saying like this difference of 130, is it significant? Like could it have occurred by chance? So that will be in the third video. But we'll continue in first with probability. So let's try to describe how can we build models for this distribution of data. Okay, and next video continues here.